In my lectures, I would now say, welcome back from the break. This second panel will deal with the online, probably also offline collection process, not just the software implementing it, but the process in its entirety, the possibilities it offers, but also the issues. I will introduce the panelists and their presentations as we go. And we will start with Claudia Kutschbach, Director from the German Federal Ministry of the Interior. And she will report on the collection and ID requirements from the German perspective. Ms. Kutschbach, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I would also like to thank the organization for inviting us to the conference, because also for us it's quite a good possibility to exchange the experiences we all got so far. And within my presentation, I will just give you a rather quickly overview on how we in Germany implemented the regulation on ECI. And we had to enforce a law as well as Austria on that, and this law mainly covers the responsibilities for the certification process and also for the verification of statements of support. And I just want to give you some quick ideas on our certification and verification process. First of all, next slide please. First of all, I just want to give you our website, which we set up so that if you plan to do anything in Germany, either way have an application for certification or also the verification, that you should please check our website, because there you find a lot of information on our legal side of view, also on the authorities responsible. So this we really highly recommend. And since you get all the slides afterwards, you will all have the websites and writing or send an email. So the next slide, please. In respect to the verification of statements of support, it is our Federal Office of Administration which is responsible for doing the verification process. And they have also set up a very good website where you find a lot of information. Especially you find the form, which, next slide please. You find the form which you as an organizer should use if you want to collect statement of supports, because it is really important that you have a form which is meeting all the requirements of the regulation on ECI. And this form was checked by the Commission and has a go. So please go ahead and use that one. And if you have any questions, I wrote down also an email address, so you can contact directly our colleagues from this office and ask them questions if you plan to do anything in Germany. So it's always quite helpful to check with the persons responsible. So my next slide, please, would be on the certification process for the online collection system itself. There it's our Federal Office for Information Security which is responsible, and they also have a website. So again, the advice, go there and check it, because they have a really detailed description on this rather complicated process on certification. And it's really important for all you to know what are the requirements. In the morning somebody said you all know the regulation and the implementing regulation, but actually what we found out when we had the two certifications, this is some really major issue. You first have to really check everything and then go ahead and ask for certification. And this would be actually my point. What you should consider if you apply for certification in Germany. Well, first of all, it's only possible if you store the data in Germany, whether it's just the law, either way you go in this country or the next. But if you want to come to the BSE, then you have to make sure that it's only the case if the data are stored in Germany. And what we found out with the two successful certification we had so far, that you should really check, as I said, the regulations, and you should also contact our colleagues from the BSE before. Because in the two cases they had, there were a lot of questions raised before they really started the formal proceeding. Because since you really, when you really start the formal proceeding for certification, then you just have 1 month's time in order to fulfill all the requirements and show them the evidence. So this is what my colleagues told me would be really, really appreciated if you go to them. It helps you a lot. And what was the case in the two certifications on the ECI on right in human water and my voice against nuclear power. These were both initiatives. They already got the certification from our authority. They had an IT provider and hosting provider helping them. This would be obviously something, if you can somehow afford it, which is surely the major issue, this helps a lot because they know what they do and they will help you with all the necessary evidences you need to prove for getting the certification. And just one last point on this issue, please use the Commission software. Even though we heard in the morning there are several problems with the software, but if you use those software, which is improving every month, I guess, then it also fulfills already quite a lot of requirements on the regulation. So please, even though if you have somebody who is really good in IT, don't try to set up your own software because then the software as well has to be certified and everything. So it will take so much more time. So please don't even try. So, and the last thing here as well, we have a special contact point for certification questions. It's written there as well. Just if you plan to have a certification in Germany, write them an email. Say, okay, can we meet before? We have to discuss this and that. Just make use of this possibility. Well, just to sum up. We heard this morning several times that it's a major issue to have the online collection system running. And we think it's really good that the Commission has, as a kind of interim service, set up this kind of hosting platform. This definitely helps the ICIs, but we would really appreciate if this would be a permanent service as well. So this, I think it's a major point for successful ICIs, and we would really, really, really much appreciate that. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Kutschbach. I think we will save the Q&A session right for the end of this panel. There is one surprise guest who is not in your program. This is Mr. Christian Dobre, the project manager or team leader actually responsible for the production of the software, which has already been mentioned quite a few times. So he's from Digit B1 of the European Commission, and I would ask Mr. Dobre to give a short 5-minute presentation of his view on the software topic.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing this few minutes to discuss about the software. So in a brief presentation. No, the second one. So, in fact, the main objective of this presentation is to introduce the software provided by the European Commission and see how it can help you to set up your online collection system that you can put in place in order to run the online collection of statement of support. As you already know, the online collection of support can be done immediately after the registration of your initiative by the European Commission and certification by the corresponding member state authority. We have to highlight that each member state has its own certificate authority, and the procedure for certification is slightly different from one member state to another one. So probably the documentation you have to provide during this phase is different from one member state to another. So The Commission developed an online a software that you may freely download and install in order to have the online collection. The purpose of this software, the main purpose, is to help organizers build the system, to give a user-friendly interface and tool to for the organizers to manage the initiative. It is available in all 23 languages. It complies with the technical specifications, with all the security aspects that are specified in the technical specifications for online collection software. And it facilitates, in principle, the certification by member states, and also has features like exporting data to member states, and also it will help member states to validate at the end your statement of support. Mainly, the software offers a public interface where the citizens can sign up. So you have a public homepage where the citizen will find the support form that are customized as per technical as per Annex 3 of the regulation, and also it offers an administrative area where only the organizers can log in order to change different settings of the application or to run reports and so on. In a few screenshots about the application. So this is the public homepage of one initiative, and the application allows you to synchronize the data you have on the online collection software and the public registry that is maintained by the European Commission, so allowing for an import of data, and it will reflect normally the information that you have on the public register of the Commission. So you have the main objectives, subject matters, all the available languages, and also the address, the official address of the initiative on the Commission register, and also the address of your website. So this is a statement of support form. We see that the user interface language is French in this case, but as we have to sign up for Greece, then the documents are displayed in the language of that country, and you have only the documents allowed, type of documents allowed by the selected country, and also the form is customized to show which are the fields mandatory requested on the Annex 3 for the country, and so that is mainly. It also has a captcha that will, in principle, should prevent the automated submission of statement of support. So this is a second screen. We see in this case we have Germany that is selected, but the form changed. So in terms of security, as already mentioned, it complies with the regulation, and we make sure that for each release the vulnerability tests are run and all the security measures are in place. Also, the personal data is encrypted in such a way that using only the information you find on the system is not possible to decrypt the data. So the organizer have the needed information in order to be able to decrypt the data. So this allows for increased security, in our opinion. And we also offer what we call a crypto tool. So it's a backend tool to be used by organizers to generate different elements needed when you set up your initiative, your system, like a public key used for to encrypt data, and help with the passwords, and will also help to export the data to member states later on, and to decrypt the data that's coming from the application. In terms of architecture and technology, is a standard J2E application having.
Maybe we can skip through that because
okay,
time.
So, as you know, the regulation defines a online collection system as being a technical platform where we have the software, but also hardware and hosting environment, and also it must cover the business processes and stuff. So this is why a risk assessment is requested that should cover all these aspects of the online collection platform. because we are keeping personal data that is highly sensitive, so we have to make sure that the data is not misused. So in our opinion, and after it was mentioned in the morning, so the European Commission offers today free service for the registered initiatives and for the newcomer initiatives to have an online collection system set up on Commission servers in Luxembourg. It was mentioned that it's offered by Luxembourg authorities. No, it's offered by the Commission, but data center is located in Luxembourg. So therefore, all the certification request has to go to the Luxembourgish authorities. And we work together with them to put in place the system and to make sure that the required information that is needed by the certification authority will be delivered by the organizer. So we have templates, and we can help the organizers to fill in those templates and send them to the Luxembourgish authorities. And but in principle, we recommend the organizers to find a hosting provider that is certified ISO 27000. Usually, any big data center has already this kind of certification. Then you have to set up the online collection software to install it on your platform. And this the Commission website can provide you the information. And you have to configure it and use the crypto tool to do all that. Then you have to get it certified by the member state where it is hosted. So you need to provide documentation as requested by that specific certification authority. You have to notify the competent data protection authorities, and we can help you also to fill in the documentation requested for the risk assessment. So you have some templates that can help you start faster. And here are a few addresses, that you can use, and you can also contact us for any technical questions on Digit ECI at ECI-link. Thank you.
I have to apologize for the rather demanding time frame, but we have 7 presentations in 1 hour, which is a bit of a challenge. Next one would be Reinhard Posch, Chief Information Officer of the Austrian Federal Chancellery, but also an academic, professor for informatics at the Technical University in Graz. I'm afraid the transparency somehow got lost in the process, for which I apologize. Professor Posch.
Thank you. It has at least the advantage that I'm not going to distract you with the presentation, which might not always correlate with what I'm saying. Now, in Austria, as we already have heard, we have a very positive situation in the sense that we didn't have any problems until now because we didn't have any application until now. However, we have done all the required preparations. Everything is in place, and I will try to talk today about what is in place, how it is in place, and what we see as issues there in terms of what we are talking here, assessment of the process. It's the requirements which are set out. It's the risk which we always have to have in mind. We have the regulation. We have seen the software by the Commission, which, as we have heard, greatly helps in practice. What we do not have is real experience in the practical certification and validation process. And that might be a real issue. We have heard that from the standards point of view, ISO 27X is what is addressed, but this is an organizational standard. It's not a content-oriented security standard, which I would just pick out one element which you might immediately see. We have seen the software by the Commission. We have heard that this is certified. But when we now have to see an installation, how do we know that there was not any hole when the software was downloaded and installed at the specific installation? And if we make a statement that everything was okay, also the whole transmission process, which is not a part of the evaluation in Luxembourg, has to be made very sure. So we still have gaps which we have to fill along the time. what the main aspect is to prevent unauthorized processing of personal data, but also unauthorized processing in terms of generating votes or generating statements, etc., etc. Now, what are the main challenges? As we have heard, the main challenge is the timing, and it's not only a challenge for the authorities; it's a challenge for you, because you have no iterative process possible. If we see a problem, then the problem is there and you get rejected. You have to get rejected. And I will come to that back later on. The second issue is inhomogeneous setups. We have, I've just pointed out, we have the Commission software that is dealt by the Luxembourgish partners. We have nothing which covers this transfer from A to B. And then we have the national evaluation. And somehow we have to glue that together. The whole thing is topic-oriented rather than risk model-oriented. This is fine for the start. This is fine for, say, the next few years. But as we get experience, also the attackers will get experience. Come to that later on, and then we might feel the need to refine the whole process, and we will have the hopefully we will have the impetus to do it also as well. The requirements are information security and risk management. It's also functional requirements like access control, which is checked. It's the application level security. It's the database security and the infrastructure security, which is checked during this process. When it comes to the specific situation in Austria, as Mr. Stein has already pointed out, the security evaluation is done by ACID, and the overall administrative process is guided by the Ministry of Interior. So you formally will approach, or an applicant will approach the Ministry of Interior. The Ministry of Interior will ask for assistance in terms of security and technical assistance, and that will then result in the overall evaluation, which is then formally done by the Ministry of Interior. Now, there is no lack in time between these, so we have made sure that these timings are within hours at the national level, and even if you go to the wrong point, you will be redirected appropriately. The confirmation of compliance, according to the regulation, will be issued by the competent authority, which is the Austrian Ministry of Interior, and the software parts are covered mostly, well, we hope mostly by the European Community software, where we also have, and it was addressed this morning, this issue, which version of the software is used, which version of the software is evaluated. This is two very different things, and as we have seen, this is nothing which comes for free. Evaluation is costly, so we have to be very careful that all these things fit well together. In this context, the organizers should be well advised to provide all the documents upfront, because there's no reiterative process. You have to be very careful on this, so that the analysis can be done well. What we see that the attacker will not look who is responsible for what. He will look at the weakest point, and the weakest point will be the gaps in between. The transmission of the software, the gaps between the application and the user's interface, and etc., etc. So we have to look at that very carefully, and to be able to cope with this, we totally informally and voluntarily offer anyone who is approaching us for evaluation, we invite you to come and to tell us what you intend to do, so that you can get informal opinions that do not count into the whole timing of the 1 month. By this, we hope that we can cope with the overall situation and implement the appropriate security standards, which from the Austrian point of view is the Austrian Information Security Handbook, also going back to the BSI baseline, security and protection. catalogs. The risks we see is insider risk, not doing it properly or just neglectly doing things. From the outside, slowly we might see risk of denial of services. Because if it comes to a deadline and you can switch off servers for the last 3 days, that might be dangerous for a service. We and the attackers need experience. That's a good thing that both need experience. So it's not a real problem that we start at a low level, but gradually grow up. And one element where we think we necessarily should grow is the electronic identification. EU is preparing the regulation on the electronic identification, and when it gets cross-border, I think this EID might be a major improvement in automizing and getting easy access to the whole process, and also make it more easy for us to evaluate the whole thing, because many of the things which are there are automatically appropriately secure. And it was addressed today that you might even run without the software. If you had it fully EID and e-signature based, that would theoretically even be a problem, would be a possibility. We could talk on that later on. And mobile electronic identification might solve the availability problem along the time, and that was the thought behind my question I had this morning, where I asked which instruments are you using for providing software in Luxembourg. Like you are providing this software, we might talk and think about can we also provide things like EID to enhance these things on such a basis. And I already talked with Paco years ago on that, and I think that might be a very good thing.
If I may quickly jump in with a question to both Mrs. Kutschbach and Professor Posch. If I'm organizing an ECI, how much do I have to budget for the certification process?
How much do you have to budget? You mean what it costs yourself?
Yeah.
First of all, the certification itself is free of charge. You don't have to pay anything. But to be honest, what we heard, we don't know the exact figures of the organizers, but maybe your colleague, our colleague, Mr. Engel, you might know what they paid you in order to have the service. Or what do you mean?
Certification by the BSE is
what
for free.
do you mean the cost for us? It's
Yes.
for free, yes.
That's for free.
Yes, that's what you want to know. Okay.
And yours is for free too.
It's not for free, but it's not the applicant who pays for it. It's the Minister of Interior who pays for it.
Okay, so I won't have to budget any direct expense. Okay.
But be careful. You will have expenses in providing the documents. You will have expenses in providing the background. That's why we advise you to have a prior talk with us, so that you see what you need and don't get surprised along the line.
And with this.
If I may add, when providing a document, so I said that the Commission can help you filling in the documents for the risk assessment. So currently we identified 5 documents that are requested for the Luxembourg authorities. And for example, we talk about business impact analysis, an organizer security scope, organizer risk analysis, risk treatment plan, statement of applicability for the security. So all these are related to the organizers only, and we can help filling that in. If the data center is also ISO 27K certified, that will cover a part of the requirements from the technical specifications, plus these documents that could cover the part related to the organizer, and plus the risk assessment that covers the software itself. Then you should have a complete package.
That's a tall call for an NGO. So we'd better all study computer security before organizing an NGO. Okay. The next presentation will be given by Mr. Gregor Wender, the Deputy Head of Department of Electoral Affairs at the Federal Ministry of the Interior, and he will give us his thoughts on the verification of statements of support, the thing that happens right at the end, and when the Ministry will tell you how many of the support declarations you have collected will actually count.
Thank you, Professor Brosse. Yeah, this is right. This is basically the end of the long story. We heard a lot this morning about how you get started at all, how difficult it will be, and let's say all these obstacles are overcome, you will finally show up with the statements of support. And while the regulation gives you a relatively good guideline how to do it roughly, it's still upon the member states to find precise solutions how to tackle with a possibly high number of signatures and statements of support. As you can see here, the competent authority for verification in Austria is the Federal Electoral Board. Very precisely, legally speaking, it's not the Ministry of the Interior, it's the Election Commission, the Federal Electoral Board. But of course, they don't have their own infrastructure. They draw upon the Federal Ministry of the Interior, that is basically the face of the Electoral Board to all you as the organizers. Article 8, saying more about the verification, certification of statements of support, is also the guideline for us. But of course, the the ECI Act in Austria specifically lined out what you need and should help those that organize an ECI, what precisely they have to furnish, and also what they accept or have to accept when they come up with the statements of support. The collection period, as you know, is the 12 months. We discussed about that also this morning, according to Article 5, paragraph 5. We don't see the starting point so strictly after the registration by the Commission. So we think there might be a little bit room afterwards, namely because of the exact wording of the regulation saying that all statements of support shall be collected after the date of registration and within a period not exceeding 12 months. That doesn't mean there is the shooting gun and that is the registration. It means this is the official information for you as organizers that you can start, but it does not mean for you specifically that you have to start right away. There is a natural period where it all ends. This is when you have to destroy all the documents, which is after 18 months. So you can do the mathematics yourself, how much time you may have or how much little room you do. I understand that other countries may see it differently. It's just a guideline for you that you might, if you come up with signatures in Austria, not necessarily have to start right away, notwithstanding the fact that the 12 months period is the binding one because we have the obligation by law, as we discussed this morning. Next slide, please. The statements of support, as you know, can be furnished in 3 different ways: in paper form, in digital form, and if you use an advanced electronic signature, in this specific digital form. Austria is one of those countries that require more than just the name and an address and the date of birth. We also need some additional personal data. It's either the number of passport or the number of a personal ID card. This mainly because of the fact that these 2 documents are linked to citizenship and also to the voting right and the participation right in the ECI. We are able to check this personal information with a national identity document register. This is a register that is actually run by the Federal Ministry of the Interior. So we are able to match the information provided by those supporting the ECI with the numbers in that database. Austria is also one of the few countries that will not do random sampling. You might remember that from past discussions, neither in paper form nor in digital form, which of course will also prove to be challenging for us, as we know. Next slide, please. Yes, the Austrian ECI Act gives some clear guidance based on the regulation. Nothing was made up, nothing was added. It's just an explication and explanation of what is in the regulation. And one of the things is no verification of statements of support happens at all. Yeah, there's no counting starts if the registration was not published by the Commission. I think this is obvious. Another one, the second one, the statements of support, if they have not been submitted according to the regulated time frame, no counting starts. And I think this better helps you understand why this morning Mr. Stein said that we have no legal basis at the moment to start the counting when you come late, because we are bound by this ECI law as it stands. Of course, then other things come into place, the forms, if they are not correctly used, or if you use different forms, or if the online collection system was not used, etc. I don't want to go into detail because I know the clock is running. Next slide, please. The verification procedure as such will need an IT application. So we will have some kind of interface where we'll enter data, and we will need a link to the identification document register, as I told you before. And we found a legal basis, or created a legal basis specifically to do this for data protection rules. Next slide, please. Okay, just keep bumping. Yeah, so you see the IT application here? Just keep pushing the bar. Yeah, and now you have the different statements of support. You have them if you cast them online in an XML format, probably. It could also be that somebody uses a PDF format while doing it online, so we have to be prepared for that as well. Or in the future, this is the box here on the right, it could even be something scanned. So the paper format does not necessarily mean that somebody really comes up with the paper. It could also be scanned in and sent by email, so we will have to be prepared for that. And the little cloud here shows you the digital, the electronic advanced signature. Even though we know that not too many do it at the moment, we have to be prepared that people do come with it. So this is another use case that we'll have to be prepared about. So the application, this IT application will receive these different forms and will process them. Next slide, please. The verification procedure will all start with the ID numbers, as I told you. So you'll have the passport number or the ID card number, and this is punched into the system. And usually, thanks to the identity document register, most of the time you will know right away if that person exists or not. And only if questions remain, because let's say a digit was wrongly written in, or because something was not legible, or something in one way or the other was missing, then you have to look further into detail. If all goes well, you will create the hits, and you will have a database of those that were not identified. This is also necessary for you as organizers, knowing, okay, we had problems here, why were these invalid? And it's also necessary for a constitutional court review. The certification issued at the end will go to the organizers. You will need that for the commission, but it will also be posted on the internet and on the official bulletin board of the Federal Electoral Board. Next slide, please. I think we might want to push one more time or two more times. Yes. Does it work? Not to sleep, probably. Okay, so this is the statement of support form, as you know it. Just keep pushing, please. Thank you very much. So you see the red box here, that's the ID number. If you push that in and you do a manual entry and you identify the person and you have these hits according to the identity document register, you're done pretty quickly. If you have problems, you will have that little negative sign down here, that minus, and then this database that I explained to you will be created. So this is the example how you do it with a paper form. If you do it online, of course, you don't need that because it's done by the computer. Next slide, please. So statements of support are invalid, and now it comes what I just described before. If the numbers of these identity documents could not be verified according to the database and other feasible means, so if there is no other clue to do it, if the required data is missing or incorrect, so this is really then the end of it. If the signatures are missing or obviously come from another person, this also goes for the digital signature, of course, which will be the same character of signature, or the specific person already supported the ECI before. As you know, you can only do it once. Next slide, please. So the conclusion at the moment is, what you've seen here, this one screenshot and these ideas show you we are on the way. We're not totally done yet because we are aware that not tomorrow or the day after tomorrow all these signatures will come in. But we are on the route. Test runs are ahead, so I think we will be prepared in a few weeks from now. And the challenge, of course, is to deal with these different documents, with these different forms. This is something that we still have to work with our computer experts to find all this in a legible format, to find all this in a processable format, and also to get quick links with some degree of tolerability. You might have one street name that is written a little bit differently, but everybody knows it's the same street. So you want to have some kind of margin, of tolerable margin within that computer system. So these are the little challenges that we have. And on the other hand, the ID document register allows smooth and quick identification, much more than in many other solutions, because we do have these numbers, and if they fit, the ID is here. So future possibilities will include, as I said, more opportunities to accept other formats, perhaps even start with an OCR form or equipment that we can come in with. So we are still in the works, what is needed, what can be done, what is feasible. And this is one of the big challenges of this new tool, to also experiment a little with IT. And I think all our tech experts enjoy this as well. So thank you very much for your attention.
Again, I would like to have one little follow-up question to Mr. Wender. So I have to be, in order to have my signature verified, or my support declaration verified in Austria, I have to be Austrian citizen.
Yes.
Now, let's assume I'm a UK subject living in Vienna. Where do I count?
Well, it depends on what the UK rules say.
Well, that's interesting, because the UK rules say in Annex 3 that I have to be, in order to count on the UK contingent, a UK permanent resident. So if I'm a UK subject living in Vienna, you will tell me, nope, go back to Britain. The British will, on the other hand, say, my dear man, you are not a permanent resident in the United Kingdom. In fact, this issue concerns about 11 million citizens residing in the European Union. There's been a paper published by Mr. Stein and Professor Müller-Törek, I think well over a year ago, and they reckon, estimated about 11 million European Union citizens residing in the European Union. We're not talking about somebody in Swaziland. EU citizens residing in the EU who simply cannot support an ECI, who cannot exercise a citizen's right granted to them by the Treaty of Lisbon, because Annex 3 has been drafted in an inconsistent way. I believe this is important to note, and we will proceed to the next presentation. Mr. Timo Salovara, who is probably the pendant to Mr. Stein in Finland, from the Finnish Ministry, from the Finnish Population Register Center, and he will give us his view, his process on the verification of statements of support. Mr. Salovara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I come from the competent authority for verification of statements of support in Finland. And I'll be very, very brief, because my colleague, Mr. Wender, already covered the basics, described the regulation provisions, so I need not to go again into that. First, as a comment to Professor Prosser, Finland accepts and verifies statements of support from our own citizens, regardless of their place or country of residence, and also all European Union citizens who are permanent residents of Finland. So now I'm very happy about that. But about the verification, Finland will verify all statements of support submitted in electronic form. We expect to have those statements in an XML form exported from the OCS, for example. But if we receive any paper form statement of support, we will verify a sample of them if we are going to have several thousands of forms. But now, according to the discussions in the morning, I noticed that not many, or if any, organizers are collecting on paper. So maybe this is more theory than practice in the future, but we shall see. And we will use our national population register, which is, in other words, a citizen information database for this verification. And our existing solution, it makes fully automated verification of statement of support in electronic form possible, because we have been doing similar things already for a long time. We are going to use a heuristic algorithm which was originally developed for purposes of medical research. And the software is in place, and we are using it for other purposes. And also, during a few weeks, because we have also a National Citizens Initiative, which is a new institution in our country, the first Citizens Initiative will send us 50,000 statements of support regarding the national initiative. So we will have a full test in practice of this software. And it is very quick because it doesn't need any manual input. The program will mass process the statements of support and can handle more than 1,000 checks per minute. And if you talk about the statement of support in paper form, we will convert those into electronic data form in order to make this kind of automated verification possible. So we will first scan them into pictures, and the chosen sample will be then recorded in data format. And my second slide, please. Yes, and the requirements for verification in our view, well, these requirements come from the Finnish constitution and secondary laws that apply to this case. The requirements are promptness. We have to give answers quickly. If the organizers have questions, how do I submit, what you are going to do, we have to give precise answers quickly. Also, the organizers and the citizens have the need to get verification results quickly, and that's what we are trying to do. Also, we have to be reliable. Our verification results they must be trusted in order for all this to work. We have to be transparent. We have to tell what kind of methods we are going to use for verification. And also, which is very important, we must protect the confidentiality and data security of the personal details on statement of support. And there is further information available at our website. We decided that it's best to publish things regarding this issue on our website. So this is just a screen capture from our website where we are explaining how the European Citizens Initiative work, how do you submit, and there are links to relevant material on the Commission and other websites. So that was all I was going to say. Thank you very much for your attention.
I've always suspected that the Finnish were rather efficient in IT matters. You have confirmed my suspicion. Thank you for this interesting presentation. Software for online collections, e-campaigning as a tool. This will be the topic of Mr. Florian Engel from More Onion. Please.
Hello, hi. As you already said, thank you. My name is Florian Engel, and More Onion is a digital agency helping non-profit organizations with digital campaigning, e-campaigning, and also the tools you need for online campaigning. Thank you. Now, we've helped the My Voice Against Nuclear Power initiative. We've worked together with Klaus. We've also supported the Happy Cows initiative. As you might know, the Happy Cows initiative has withdrawn their ECI by now, and the My Voice Against Nuclear Power initiative has been rejected by the Commission. So it's not exactly as bloomy as we hoped it to be. Next slide, please. A lot of you have already raised a few concerns and a few very good points about why the ECI might be not quite as democratic as it's been advertised, why it might be a bit flawed in some areas. And a lot of those things have been already said, so I don't want to repeat them. But one of the things that I do want to say is actually regarding something quite simple. Now, I come from a campaigning background. Organizations run professional campaigns in order to influence either political decisions or public opinion or public behavior. Next slide, please. Now, For me, something like democracy basically means people power. It means that people are allowed, not just allowed, people can participate in political processes. With the ECI, that was one of the large promises. But every one of you who's ever run a public campaign knows that people power does not mean collecting signatures once. It means to be actually able to mobilize people. Next slide, please. Now, if you have the possibility to collect 1 million statements of support, and then you hand that over to the European Commission, and they decide to just not act upon it because they don't feel it's important at all to them, then that was it. That was great, a nice year, but eventually what actually pressures politicians to take action is that you're also able to mobilize these people. If you're not able to mobilize your 1 million supporters, then there's no people power. Next slide, please. Now, that problem could be solved quite easily. Basically, the regulation states that you're not allowed to use any of the data that you collect as part of the European Citizens Initiative. Now, as a usability and interface designer, to me that's just a problem of a single checkbox. It's a checkbox like that says, yes, I would like to receive further updates. Yes, I do want to participate in your campaign. Now, that's a simple statement that people can make, and every citizen could make, and then just be able to get further updates of the campaign that they've already backed, because they clearly back the campaign. Now, that's a problem within the regulation, and thus also one of the problems within the software that has to follow those regulations. So a lot of the problems are not just the software, there are a mixture of the software, the regulations, and lots of crazy things in between. So I'm just asking a simple question, why not introduce a checkbox, whether that's online or offline? People who want to be in touch with their campaigns would have to fill in a separate form just to be able to actually participate in the campaign or receive further updates. Next one, please. Now, I've been invited to talk about the online collection system, and our experience was really quite interesting. I don't want to bore you with all the technical details. We could probably ramble on about that for quite a long time. Actually, we've already done that in a conference setting where we've been invited by the Commission to also give feedback and chat with them. Now, I still want to give you a few rough numbers and a few ideas on what we've actually went through. Next slide, please. We've actually been the first agency to sort of get, the first anyone who actually got the system approved. Unfortunately, the ECI got not approved, but and that was also partly due to the help from our German friends. Thank you very much. Actually, we tried to find a national chapter that actually replied to emails. And we found one, and they even replied with decent answers and gave us an interpretation of the legislation, etc. So that was really very helpful. Now, I don't really want to scare you away. I don't want to shock you, but maybe a bit. So if it's what I want to say up front is that we've had lots of discussions with members, also with the developers of the software itself, and with members from the European Commission. And this is all the problems that are not the fault of individuals working on the software. I might have to repeat that, it's not the fault of the developers. There are a few things that might seem to be like that, but in fact the problems are much bigger than that. So this is not criticism of the developers, it's just a bit of a mess they've gotten themselves into. Now, we've had 2 developers work on that full-time. Now, that does not include attending conferences, reading the documentation, scratching our heads, trying to find our way through the European Union website. We actually did that collaboratively most of the time. For about 2.5 months. Now, that's 2 IT experts working for 2.5 months. And our developers, they do that a lot, so they are quite good at what they're doing. This is not just random tech people. The total costs, that's just a ballpark. and we did not bill all of that to the organizations that hired us, is about 40,000 euros, no VAT included.
You're cheap.
I know we're cheap, I know. Now, the end product was quite frustrating as well. Now, why did it take so much time? What did we do all that time? Now, we started off, basically the first day they released, the European Commission released the software. We even attended the conference in Brussels, etc., etc. The first step was to actually get it up and running and actually be able to take a look at it. That took about, I think, 3 to 4 weeks. And at that stage, we also collaborated with the other agency that actually managed to set up that system, which is currently the Water ECI, which is the only system that's up and running. And collaboratively, we sort of fixed a few bugs, did a few tweaks to the software and to the setup, and finally got it up and running, and then we saw it. Next slide, please. To all of you who have not seen it, you kind of spoiled my point here. But to all of you who have not seen it, like if you are an interface designer, or if you know something about usability, then this is how you would do it if you do not want anyone to sign this form. Now, there's one thing we know about people who use the internet. They hate filling out forms. Everyone hates filling out forms. It's tedious, it's annoying. Now, the more complicated you make these forms, the more annoying it will get. And there are so many things that you can do to the form that you'll never actually be able to fill it out. And whenever you click the OK button and you still can't validate that form, that's a seriously painful experience. Now, in combination with campaigning, that's a bit of a mess, because in campaigning we try to make things like participation within the campaign as easy as possible, as painless as possible. And in fact, people don't even sign the petition if we hassle them. That's a fact. Next slide, please. So basically what we found is a tool that is not user-friendly at all. I'm sorry to have to say that. It is a dread to use. And in fact, it's now online and being used live, for example, by the Water ECI. And it has troubles validating ID numbers, for example. There are no standards for ID numbers in all kinds of different countries. They change the patterns ID numbers have on a daily basis. I'm exaggerating, sorry. But at the moment, they find themselves in a terrible situation because they cannot accept a lot of those signatures, because the software just blocks their ID number, although it's valid. Now, the same thing, there are many things like that. It's not really accessible. If you're blind, you cannot sign the form. Fact. Nothing you can do about it right now, unless you want to change the software, modify the software.
We are running short, out of time.
Sorry, yeah, I'll speed up. Campaigning best practices, not applied at all, no way. We basically, for the nuclear power campaign, we had to set up a completely separate online tool, website and e-campaigning setup that is pretty much not integrated with the OCS at all, only to a very limited, it's very limited by the regulations. Last point, security nightmare. I say security nightmare because it's a nightmare to get it secure enough to comply to these ISO standards. Next slide, please. Now I'm just asking, the software had a budget of about €500,000. Now that sounds a lot to you, but it's not enough. Still not enough. At the same time, most of those problems that we faced could have been solved. And with decent consulting, that would be probably about as expensive as €10,000. A huge chunk of these issues could have been resolved, could have been prevented. Next slide. Thank you, and if you have any questions, feel free to just ask.
Just one remark. We did an analysis, actually not a usability, but a normal software analysis of this software at my department, and we arrived at exactly the same conclusions. It was not stable, it was difficult to handle, and it took 2 students who were, well, not bad, quite some time to even get it to a point where it was running reliably. So I can fully confirm these observations, yes. Our final presentation in this slot is hurdles and obstacles. I should add, as seen from the organizer of an ECI. So if you're an organizer of an ECI, it will probably be interesting to get that point of view from somebody who professionally deals with business processes, here administrative processes, and will check the entire thing from a process perspective. Professor Müller-Törek, Professor for E-Government at the University of Public Administration in Ludwigsburg, Germany. Robert.
Yeah, thank you so much. It is aimed on ECI organizers. You do remember there was one ECI which was, after having been registered, withdrawn by July. I've been authorized by these guys to talk, authorized by them when it comes to the slides where I explain why they withdrew their ECI. Okay, next slide. The ECI at one glance for organizers, you are fully responsible for all the online and offline collection on your own. There is no legal way to limit your personal responsibility and liability. So if you have a homeowner, your home is at stake. And if the folks from Mr. Dobre from the Commission assist you in filling in some forms, whatever they fill in, you are personally liable for that. They will not assume liability. You are also fully liable because data processing, data protection is a big issue in the European Union. You are fully liable that all the data protection laws and directives are kept. And because we have the principle that the individual member states are responsible for everything, you are facing in total 81 different criminal, civil and administrative legal systems in 27 member states with 23 languages. This means the strong message the European Union is sending to you organizers is, do all on your own and alone. But you are fully liable and responsible for everything. And if someone complains, be prepared to face a civil lawsuit before Bulgarian courts and criminal charges in Ireland simultaneously. Because you are fully liable as organizers. And if some, etc. Okay, next slide. So the question and issues you face in reality is, you are 7. You are so lucky that you convinced Helmut Schmidt into becoming one of your organizers. But unfortunately, he's 90-something. He could die. Then you are but 6. What happens now? Did the ECI fail? Because someone says, hey, you are now 7. You are just 6. What happens? If somebody manages to break into your online collection system and steals data, who of the 27 public prosecutors in the member states, who is in charge? Is it the English Queen's Council because it were data on an English server? Is it the public prosecutor in Slovakia because the backup server was in Slovakia? Who is in charge of prosecuting you? Then you are 7. Which one should be prosecuted? Anyone picked randomly? The wealthies, the one who lives in Germany. Robert Stein, for example, he will prosecute the one to whom he has the easiest access. Hey, you are Austrian. Got you. And then, because probably someone doesn't like you, the Data Protection Authority of Hungary says, you, the organizer, 10,000 supporters' data were stolen. I fine you with 1,000 Hungarian forints for each. That makes 10 million Hungarian forints, and you have to pay them. Maybe you can claim back 6/7 from your fellow organizers, maybe not. Of course, the European Union is governed by the rule of law. You can appeal against this decision, but please, before a Hungarian court, with a Hungarian lawyer in Hungarian language. As I have heard in the morning, absolutely no problem for no ECI, or times 27. And my accusation is that none of these and many, many other issues, we have heard some, is regulated by the ECI regulation. And as I have heard from the Commission, we are going to, and from the Parliament, we are going to solve this trial by error. No worry, we find a solution. Oh, the system was not workable. No worry, we find a solution. We stopped the 12 months. This cannot be. Okay, next one. The Happy Cows supporting better dairy, they had their ECI registered, were free to start the collection, but then withdrew it. Why? The organizers were very professional. Big NGOs, Compassion in World Farming, World Society for the Protection of Animals, plus Ben & Jerry's. You know Ben & Jerry's? You know who the proprietor of Ben & Jerry's is? Unilever, right. They are really highly professional. Sufficient funds, they had more than 500,000 of funds, and the possibility to get some additional money without problems. I do not remember that any one of the ECIs in the morning today had 500,000 already. A topic which is, we all like cows in Europe, so it should be possible to get some support for that. Everyone likes cow, everyone wants cows to be happy. Even the Swiss, despite not being European Union members. So the reasons they told to the Commission in an official letter were, the ECI in its current format is not workable. Delays in providing workable free online collection software as per July 2012. I have heard rumors that this improved slightly, but we shall see. High security for the software would have gone against best campaign practices, as Mr. Engel told us. I suppose he agrees to that.
We've consulted them.
Oh, thanks. Data protection issues, which means we cannot distribute the petition leaflet widely. Just an example. If one of your brave supporters collects signatures in Paris for a whole day, he's got one pack of statements of supports, and he simply forgets them in the metro when leaving. That's a violation of data protection laws, and you, as organizers, are personally liable for that. Okay, next. Then, there is no easy way of tracking progress in terms of the numbers, because you have this national contingents. What is the figure for Austria, Robert? 9,000, 7,000 something?
14,250.
Also,
147.
Okay, maybe it's something like 15,000. It's important for you as an organizer to know how many Austrians signed it. So you have to make daily statistics, even of the paper-based statement of supports, to get the numbers and to control them. And to know, okay, now I have the 14,700 something. But to be on the safe side, because Mr. Stein checks without random sampling, maybe you should go for 16,000 something and add a safety buffer. You permanently have to check it. Then, the verification in every country is varied, and the cost and time required override the potential outcome. And so they said, sorry, the ECI is not mature enough, we withdraw it. And they believe, we, the Happy Cows, we believe once the current problems are so resolved, it can be an effective tool, and then we will come again, probably. So, Omid, imagine if you are the organizer of an ECI, the risk was too high for professionals. Is the risk okay with you? Your answer later in the discussion. Next one. I don't know. Next one, please. Sorry. Yeah. So now a little bit into theology. The limbo is the space, not the real hell, a little bit before, where you warm up and get a little roasted by the devils. And the first legal limbo Alexander mentioned is, it's explicit in the Constitution of the United States that all individuals are created equal. I suppose it's also a fundamental principle of the European Union that all the citizens are equal, but they are not, because it's me on the left side. I have the choice whether I sign up for the contingent on the German ticket or on the Austrian ticket. And if I sign up and support on the wrong ticket, probably the whole ECI could fail, because the Austrian contingent is one statement of support too short, because I signed up on the other side, on the German side, where they already had millions of statements. Next one, Claudia, is quite easy. The third one is the problem, Stewart. No. One before. Yeah, here we go. Yeah. Sorry. Stewart is the problem, as we mentioned. He lives in Austria. He has a UK passport. he must not support an ECI. And the third one, Domenica, who resides in Austria, has both an Australian and an Italian passport, may sign up on the Italian contingent. By the way, she doesn't speak a single word Italian. She inherited the nationality from her father. She's an Australian, but anyhow. What will the courts of the Union say? Next slide, please. Legal limbo number 2, I called it casino democracy. We have 4 different statements of support. I supported it, but I misspelled my address. I couldn't get Claudia to sign it, but I'm so sure she likes cows and there is no electronic signature needed for a statement of support online collection. I know her personal data because I have an excellent relationship with her. So I key in her data. Whoop, done. Third one, Stewart. As a good Englishman, he must not support on the Austrian or British ticket, but he doesn't like cows, and when he returns from the pub, he keys into the system without any electronic signature, without everything. Donald Duck, duck down, British national. Whoop. The fourth one, Domenica, she doesn't speak Italian, she gives her statement of support on the German form. I believe, we can discuss it later, all of the 4 are totally illegal and should not be counted. But thanks to what I call casino democracy, if the random sampling roulette goes round and those 4 are not checked, they will be valid and remain undetected. Is that what we want to have in Europe? Not in my Europe. Next slide, please. And the third one, I believe it's the best. The regulation states that 1 month after submitting the verification certificates from the 27 authorities to the European Commission, the organizers must destroy all data physically and electronically. This means if you have a lawsuit pending because Mr. Stein from Spain, you have some troubles with him, he doesn't accept some statements of support, you have a lawsuit pending before the administrative courts of Spain. Can this administrative court order your services provider in Slovakia, where you have your database, not to destroy it? If it cannot order, then all the evidence is destroyed. Perfect. I mean, how should that go? If months later someone says, yeah, this ECI, everything was forged, all the data was wrong. Hey, you cannot prove the opposite because you have no evidence anymore. You destroyed everything. Mr. Stein down in his basement and the election authority, I think he has the ballots from the first elections in 1945 or something like that. At least from the 50s. He keeps them. He's forced to do so by law. That's normal in a democracy, that you keep the ballots and don't destroy them. Okay, next one. So coming to an end, summary. Organizers are left on their own without any collection infrastructure. But, as a compensation for being left alone, they are fully liable for everything. In 27 states, in 23 languages, criminal charges, administrative lawsuits, civil lawsuits, welcome. But they are not so totally left alone. They have been given a non-operational software by the European Commission. And the real expenses, I believe there are in Austria only 3 data processing centers which are certified ISO 27K. Or maybe it's 4, 3 or so. They are expensive. If you try to rent them for 1 year, please bring at least 300,000 euros with you. Having to collect signatures for an ECI, which probably will be challenged before European courts with a doubtful outcome. If Stewart goes to the European courts, maybe they stop all ECIs currently running. And finally, after you have collected your statement of supports, you put them into the, what I call, verification casino democracy. And you don't know how much of the 1.3 million you collected or you believe to have collected will prevail. So at the end, maybe you fail. And I raise one simple question. Was this the intention of the authors of the Treaty of Lisbon? Thank you so much.
We're a little bit over time, but I would like to invite the audience to place a few questions. And in this session, I would prefer to have it done interactively, so we'll immediately answer the questions. You need not identify yourself, but please identify the person you ask the question to.
Yes, hello. I have a question to Mrs. Kutzbach. You said that it would be best if the citizens, or even nearly an order, that the citizens use the software provided by the Commission. And then afterwards we heard all the critics that was about the software. So I wanted to know what you think about that. Like, is that really something which should be done, even though there is all these critics? Shouldn't we think? Yeah.
Yes, I definitely think you should use the Commission software because we don't have any better. That's the point. And even the Commission is really trying to improve the software. And I mean, they started from scratch as well, so we all need a little time to improve things. So better use that because they are already. The Commission says they are meeting a lot of requirements. And this is what we count on then, because if you develop your own, we have to check everything, and you have to prove everything. So,
I think from an administration point of view, this is totally fair. And concerning the critics, if there is flaws in the software, this is about the liability of those who have certified the software. They have to be very careful on making a statement that the software is okay. And therefore, this is true for everyone who produces software. You are claiming that a random provider would be better than the Commission provider. There's no evidence for such.
Before we proceed to Mr. Stein, who wants to make a statement on this, I would like to ask one follow-up question. There's the presumption of innocence. Do you two, as a certification authority, operate under the presumption of functionality of the software? Do you implicitly assume that the software works as a black box and not check it anymore?
That's what the regulation says.
Okay. Mr. Stein.
It's not a question, it's a remark. From the very beginning of the development of the regulation, Austria, represented with 3 ministries, did many efforts not to get the online collection system, not to get the software, but to develop the whole platform, the whole system that the Commission offers the whole system with a database, and you could submit your signature to the Commission, and it was a no-go. And about months or years, it seemed to us that the position of the Commission has been a laissez-faire. That means online collection system, your private problem. And the compromise, which is better than the solution having nothing, but in my opinion worse, having a complete system on the level of the Commission. The compromise in the finish of the process was that it has been offered an online collection system to download and to implement in yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the gentleman in the last row, and then you, sir.
Donald O'Brien, I'm from Ireland. I'm not representing any organisation. I have one question for Professor Miller-Turuk. You mentioned all the hurdles and obstacles. Are there any jurisdictions, for example, Switzerland or perhaps some of the states of the United States where all the hurdles and obstacles that you have mentioned have been mitigated in whole or in part, and would you care to even outline them, please?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. What do you mean by any the juridical decisions in Switzerland, US?
You mentioned a whole lot of hurdles and obstacles to online collection. I gather that they do not have online collection in Switzerland at present, although they do have e-voting, as far as I know.
They have e-voting, but they don't have any online collection,
Yes,
according to my knowledge.
But they do have nearly 150 years of experience of direct democracy in a confederation that has 4 working languages, and I don't know about the legal systems. Is there a variation from the French to the German? I'm not sure about that. And highly diversified in terms of cantons and that. My question is, I suspect that they too have faced similar things to the hurdles and obstacles.
I know what you mean. I think.
And my question is, if they have done that in Switzerland, what mitigation measures are they using to overcome the hurdles and obstacles that you mentioned? And my second subsidiary question, are there parts of the states of the United States, and I use that explicitly, where they have done the same kind of thing?
The only thing I know, and I learned it from Professor Bichler once, is that in California, for a referendum, you can collect online, and they believe in the law. Was it California?
It's not California, but Norway, no? So there's no online collection system. They're a private signature gatherer.
Okay, they're just private signature gathering, paper-based. They don't check it at all. What they do is they believe in the law of high numbers and say, okay, if some organizer presents us with 2 million signatures, raises his hand and swears that they are truly collected, then they simply believe him and start, for example, the recall of the governor. That's the only thing I know. Unfortunately, I don't know whether the European Parliament or the Commission invited anyone for the public consultation from Switzerland, etc. Sorry, but I cannot answer the question.
Okay, gentleman in the second row.
Thanks a lot. First point is I can really recommend to work with Florian Engel on online collection systems. It's highly enjoyable and highly professional. This is one point I would like to make from ECI proponent being myself. The second question I have on that is, for me, I experience like involuntarily the Commission tried to put something in place which looks like being an ECI. And from the impression I have, I think it's flawed to an extent that I would like to know, is there a means for us to appeal the way it is right now? Like to say, this is not what you have promised us, it's not good enough to fulfill the promise of participation. Can we challenge that in a legal way? Because I think this would be right now the consequent point to do if the situation is as many ECIs feel. And the third one is, I think we are here a public which is highly knowledgeable about ECIs, and I would like from the panelists, I would like to know who of them have signed an ECI or even tried to talk some friends into signing one and what the experience was.
Can I?
So, did anybody, I mean, I didn't sign an ECI. Did anybody of you sign an ECI? No?
I actually tried to sign the water ECI, but I failed. It didn't work, yeah.
Yeah. Robert has a
I signed one by accident because I wanted to try out. I pretended I were an Englishman with a residence in Austria, and because I wasn't asked for any capture or thing like that, it worked and it entered into the database. I believe it was the water ECI. I did it just for scientific purposes, and in the field with the address I signed, this is a scientific test. But what is Übereilungsschutz in English?
Protection of prematurity protection. Rash protection.
They didn't implement that. So I signed it by accident with wrong data. And it worked. By the way, the system was certified by somebody.
You probably didn't enter your ID number, because otherwise, if it was right, it would have rejected that submission.
Okay, the lady in grey, if we may pass the microphone on. And with this lady's sign, I would like to finish the list. I would like to finish the list. We've had a lot of presentations.
Thank you, Chairman, for giving me the floor. Just to present myself, my name is Mar. I'm working for a company that it's called Cytel. We are working on innovation democracy basis. We have developed actually a software that is technology proven, that we have worked with many countries in the world, providing technology advance for introducing internet voting solutions. The technology is there, is available. We have been using, for example, for the Switzerland canton of Deutschland.
This is actually for questions, not for advertisement.
Sorry. They are using this for a referendum in a daily basis when they need it. Also, this could be a very nice solution for the European Union to give to the citizens the possibility to vote through their smartphone through a very secure way. That end-to-end technology, very completely auditability of the system.
Do you have a question?
No, it's just to inform that there are
Okay, then we may pass on to the next question to the lady in blue.
My name is Heike Achte. I'm an organizer of an ECI which was submitted to the Commission about a fortnight ago. And I'd like to come back to the English people, the Brits living in other countries than Great Britain, because I've got some friends exactly in this situation, and I know they would like to sign the ECI. And maybe among them will be some of them, someone who really gets annoyed if they experience they cannot sign, and even might want to go to the court because of this. So, listening to your discussion, I thought this problem might be already known for some month or maybe even for a year or more. So I'd like to learn what. Are you really prepared to do about this? Maybe from the Commission. So what are you going to do when the case happened that someone from the UK or someone else from these 11 million people really insists of signing an ECI?
I can give you the formal answer. The formal answer is that in the regulation 211, the original regulation, there is a 3-year review period. So in about 3 years' time, people will convene, analyze the experience, realize that it didn't work properly, and then maybe do something. That's the official, but maybe the Commission knows more, the representative of the Commission knows more on that. If we may pass the microphone on to Madame Rive.
Yes, thank you. Just to explain a little bit more on this issue, actually in the Commission proposal for the regulation, this kind of problem was not present because the data requirements was uniform for all member states, so no European citizen was excluded. But during the negotiations with the Council and the Parliament, member states ask for different requirements because they have to verify at the end of the procedure the statements of support. And that's why we ended with this form where the requirements are different from one member state to another, and that's why some people are indeed excluded. But this has been raised by the Commission during the negotiations several times. The Commission made clear that there was here a problem that European citizens were excluded from their rights. And indeed, we hope that in the next years the problem will be solved. For example, the modification of Annex 3 is possible upon the request of the member state. For example, one member state will now accept also his nationals living abroad, because currently there are 3 member states in this situation. Among them the UK, one of them ask to add the national living abroad, so less citizens will be excluded, and we hope that the other member states will also go in this direction to solve this problem. If I may also add some comments on the procedure following in particular the last presentation, just to make clear what is in the regulation. As regards the verification of statements of support, at the end of the procedure, member states cannot charge organizers, so the member states have to issue the certificate for free. Also, that it's possible to sign a form in any language. You are not required to sign the Italian form in Italian, for example. So member states will receive the forms in any language. There is no requirement in this about this. And also that the regulation says that it's possible to keep the data in case there are administrative or legal proceedings concerning between the organizers or an authority, for example, the data collected can be kept, so they are not destroyed automatically in this case.
Based on a court order, I suppose.
The regulation says, yeah, directly you can keep them until the end of the proceedings, the final decision.
And if the final decision takes 2 years, the organizers bear the additional costs of keeping them stored in a safe place, according to data regulation, for 2 more years. 50 tons of paper in a very successful ECI. That also costs.
Yeah, indeed.
It's a catch-22, sorry.
And also, I would like to add something, because I forgot to say something this morning as regards the refused initiatives, the rejecting ones at registration. So far, we have not yet published the full text of the initiative, but we will publish them in the coming weeks. We are now reprogramming the website so that the full text of the initiative is also published.
Okay, thank you. Last question by the lady in grey with a blue scarf.
I know nothing about IT, but I'm just wondering, people are very used to deal with their bank accounts via e-banking, and I think the security requirements and all that kind of things should be developed in that area. So is there something one could somehow take over or copy or learn from them, or I don't know, because I think people must maybe very reluctant to put their passport names onto the internet, but I think they're even more reluctant to put their bank account number, and obviously they do, so there must be some security there.
If I may answer that, if a banking institution launched a new online banking system that was as successful and as reliable as the OCS, it would have its license withdrawn on the spot.
Yes, how to develop reliable software, for example.
Yes.
Another issue would also probably, just to be fair, if you are a bank, you on one hand have much more significant funds, although €500,000 is a sufficient budget for a tool like that. And the other thing is that you don't have ever-changing requirements. While these guys have been developing that software, every single member state constantly changed their requirements as they had to deliver the software. There were still member states not decided on which form fields to use, where to deliver that stuff to. There's so much in there that was not even clear at the time. And another thing that I wanted to say is that yes, there would be more significant funds, and the bank would probably also make sure that they have significant consultancy involved in the process to make sure their system is safe. Thanks.
Okay, I was asked by the organizers to provide a little wrap-up, and I prepared some slides for that. I would actually rather change over there and give me my view on the entire ECI process as I've been experiencing it since 2009. Yeah, that's the one. No, this one here. So the question is the ECI a case for a complete overhaul? So if we proceed to the next one, we have seen all the issues now. We have, in my view, unacceptable risks to the organizers. We have costs. We have, at this stage, no functioning online collection system. Maybe we'll have it in the near future. We have random sampling implemented in a number of member states. And we have concerns about the lack of credibility. As we've just learned, 11 million people residing, 11 million union citizens residing in the union are not able to even sign such an ECI. That's one of the main credibility issues, I think, here. How did we get into this, quote, MEP Hefner, mess? How did we get there? And my explanation is what I would call the Jane Austen cycle of project management. Let me briefly run you through the Jane Austen cycle of project management. It all started with a really beautiful description. Pan-European citizen engagement, something that could really contribute to the common European identity. And I'm assuming now, this is of course my personal construction, that the authors of Article 11.4 in the Treaty of Lisbon actually intended it as such. As a positive side effect, it would also be a boost, or could have been a boost, to online citizen engagement. Because if one instrument of online citizen engagement works successfully, then maybe other people will copy the idea in other fields. So it could have been a general boost to the entire area. We get to the Pride and Prejudice stage. In winter 2009-10, a consultation process was launched by the Commission, followed by a first draft regulation in spring 2010. Many of the issues were already discussed at that time. My research group, for instance, issued a statement in the consultation process where we clearly pointed out that the passport principle and the residence principle exist for assigning signatures. Either you go by nationality, and Austrians always count for the Austrian quota, or you go by residence, but not mix them. And we provided a formal argument, illustrated by some examples, that you must not mix these two principles, because otherwise you will not have a complete and mutually exclusive definition. We also identified some issues with the identification of citizens. Then the first draft of the COM appeared. There are some things that were actually better in that first draft of the Commission than in the final regulation adopted. For instance, the first draft of the Commission said persons. Persons would also have included legal entities, which means you could have, as an organizer, founded a Belgian proprietary limited company, being able to limit your risk exposure and to provide a governance structure, providing for decision mechanisms, regulation for tax purposes, the entire thing that in economics one would call a governance structure of an economic entity. In the final draft, the Citizens Committee appeared. A Citizens Committee sounds like a very fancy idea. Le Comité du Salut Public. We assemble, we the citizens. Unfortunately, it meant two things. It meant unlimited personal liability of the members of the Citizens Committee, and it meant a completely unclear governance structure. I'm sorry, I have to correct myself, it's not completely unclear, because the Commission made sure that one person and one person only is responsible to them. The rest of the governance structure is unclear. We also saw the liabilities, Article 13 and now also 14. Müller-Törek has already explained that. And on top of it, random sampling was introduced. Robert Müller-Thürich rightfully called this casino democracy. I mean, by the same argument, we could replace national elections by an opinion poll, saying, well, it's a valid sample, and we random sampled the election. Would be the same principle. I have to say that there is abundant literature from word go on all of these issues. Abundant literature that was published in international media, refereed at conferences. So one cannot say that the voices concerning these issues had never been heard and all of a sudden appeared today out of nowhere. Then the final regulation was adopted in spring 2011 and the rules changed because the deliverables changed. It was not enough to provide a nice media release or some colorful slides. It was necessary to provide a workable process with a workable software supporting it, which is decidedly more difficult than a few colorful slides, is it not? Then the regulation called for two things to be supplied by January 1st, 2012. One was the technical specification for the online collection system, and the second one was the open source online collection system as such itself. The specification for the online collection system was published on November 17, 2011. The software upon these specifications was to be provided by January 1st, 2012, 1.5 months after the publication of the specification. And the first ECI was to start the online collection as of April 2012. How anybody could have ever believed that time frame to be viable is indeed a mystery. Hence, I called this phase the mystery phase. And now we have reached present tense, sense and sensibility, I refer to it. There is no software. The first online collection system version that we checked plainly did not work. Maybe it's working now. We are confronted with a number of undefined legal issues. We have high costs and risks to organizers, and there are serious concerns about the usefulness and usability of the entire thing. And something which was intended to engage European citizens actually disenfranchised them. That's the bottom line of the entire process. So we need some, in business terms, one would say, we have to re-engineer the process from scratch. But in order to do that, we should probably focus on the core fundamental issues of the regulation. Because we are not talking about a piece of software that may work or may not work or will work someday. We are talking about a regulation that in essence does not work. So let us try to figure out, if possible, a common denominator for the issues we've been experiencing and discussing today. And please accompany me on a brief journey to this common denominator. The main issues that also popped up in the discussion today are risks and liabilities to the organizers, costs, and credibility issues. Now, what are they really due to in the regulation? What are the items in the regulation being responsible for these issues? Let's first start with the risks and liabilities. Well, obviously Article 13 and also Article 14, which determines these liabilities, is clearly the candidate. Then the Citizens Committee in Article 3. Personally, I found the original Commission version, person, which would have included a proprietary limited company, much more attractive if I was an organizer. then the internal coordination mechanisms in the Citizens Committee. Today I learned, I mean, one never stops learning, today I learned that it may be the case that if one of those 7 members of the Citizens Committee resigns, dies, somehow gets lost, all the signatures collected to that very point may be invalid. One doesn't know, it's undefined. Now that's interesting, and I've just learned that today. Then we have the certification of the software. Did I provide everything? Did I provide all the documents? I don't know. Even for me, being a computer expert, it would be just looking at the regulation, and the supporting technical specification would be very difficult to ascertain what they really want from me in detail. Of course, I would contact Mr. Posch or the BSE and ask them, but then probably the answer would be different here or there, but another place. Costs. Again, Article 13, because of course I have to limit my liability. I have to employ lawyers. I have to get legal advice in order to protect the initiative and eventually to protect myself. Then, of course, Article 5 and Article 6. Article 5 saying, you are on your own, collect it, but please don't bother us, the Commission. The credibility issues one may identify, and now I'm asking myself, here it is. The credibility issues one may identify is, first of all, Article 5. If you sign a citizens' initiative in Austria, you do so in front of an authority. They check whether it's that person. There is no check afterwards, no signature verification, no doubt, no legal limbo, no credibility issue. They've seen your passport, you've said, that's me, I want to support this. And then, of course, random sampling or Annex 3. We've already discussing just some of the issues. I could give a separate presentation just on the issues of Annex 3, which says which document can be provided by whom in order to count on which national quota. It's a science. Annex 3 is a science in its own. It took me a day to even understand it. Now, can we identify a common denominator for all this? In my view, there are 2 common denominators. First of all, the privatization of the collection process. There are things which can be privatized. Some probably have to be privatized because the public sector is, in some cases, more efficient. But there are core functions of the state, core functions of government, which should not be privatized, and democratic processes, in my view, is one of them. The second issue one may identify is harmonization issues. Directive, I forgot the number, dating back to 1993, calling for a unified European voter register. Does it exist? Nope. Well, that could be a basis upon which one could build an identification process, for instance, if it existed. Now, let's focus on the things easily at hand. If the privatization of the collection process, and I mean on paper and online, was to be reverted, this would solve a lot of issues. It would certainly solve all the cost and risk issues. And the Citizens Committee, which was originally intended maybe as a political decision-making body, and which by now has become an economic entity running a probably multi-million euro business with an unclear governance structure, unclear tax regulations, would then again become a political decision-making body if you revert this privatization. How can we revert the privatization? Well, the first step would be that the temporary fix by the Commission that the online collection system is run under the auspices of the Commission is made a permanent fix. So the Commission has to provide the complete online infrastructure, everything, tutti completi, for a registered ECI. And as for the paper collection process, which I would not discard because we still have a digital divide. Do we really want to exclude people who do not have access, for whatever reason, to the electronic media? Do we really want to exclude them? Is that really fair? I don't think so. That the paper collection process will be done by the authorities of the member states, providing their local infrastructure in the Departement, in the Kreisbehörde, in the Bezirk, wherever, in the Shire, wherever you are, the local authorities where you can go, show your passport or your ID and say, I want to support this ECI, that's me, put me on the list. So I think the reversion of this privatization concept introduced in Article 5 of the regulation needs to be reversed. And then I think many of the issues we've been discussing today will just disappear. And then we still have the harmonization issue, which is a technocratic issue and not easily solved, but at least the main issues for the organizers would fall away. And with this, I would like to conclude not just my little wrap-up presentation, but also this session. Would like to refer us all to the excellent buffet waiting there, and would like to and would like to announce the third session, which will actually proceed to the core of the entire issue, that is the legal framework as given by the regulation, because that's where I think the issues are, not just in a piece of software. Thank you.
Excuse me, if you allow, I still have 2-3 remarks to make on the software.